Welcome to the Bring Me My Books podcast. I'm Christy Kane, and I'm here with my co-host, Travis Lowe, and we're doing a bonus episode today.
Yeah.
I'm excited. So we love books. This is Bring Me My Books podcast, obviously. And so sometimes you just can't get enough of the books that you have planned, and so you have to go get more books, which is kind of what we did. But today is kind of fun. I mean, this is the only one of it's not the only bonus episode that we hope to do this year, but it is the only bonus episode that we're going to do that we have planned with kids' books.
Yes.
And so, Travis, why don't you tell us about the author, because she's a Hope Words author, and maybe start a little bit about the books that she's written.
Sure. So we're going to focus on this episode on Matali Perkins, and Matali is coming to Hope Words this year, and in all honesty, she was part of the inspiration for our theme of Hope Words, and this year's theme is the idea of in-betweenness, and we're saying that like the idea of living between cultures. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you've ever been in that place where you're in a place where you don't really feel like you fit.
Yes.
But then like maybe the first time you've ever moved out, or you live in a different place and you don't really feel like you fit there, but then you go back home and you don't really feel like you fit there either, and you're trying to figure out where you are and who you are. And that's even more so for people like Matali, who she was a child when she moved from India to the U.S. And she has one book that I brought today called Home is in Between. And I just love this book because she tells kind of her story of growing up for several years in India, moving to the States and being in a very different culture, and it being a different culture when she's at home. And then she goes to school and it's a completely different world. We have several people at Hope Words this year that have this same kind of experience. So we have Daniel Nayeri, who is our keynote. He wrote Everything Sad is Untrue. Incredible story about his life growing up in Iran and then being a refugee. They had to flee Iran because his mom became a believer, and they kidnapped her. They were going to kill her, and they were able to escape. They ended up growing up in Oklahoma, and just all the challenges of that in-betweenness.
In my town.
Yes, right
enough.
where you live, just down the road. And we're going to have Dr. Justo Gonzalez, which I'm just so excited about. But he's a Cuban-American who he wrote a book called The Mestizo Augustine, which I just loved it because he talked about how one of the reasons that St. Augustine was able to influence the church the way that he was because he was part Roman and part African. And he was living during the time when the Roman Empire was falling, and he received all this education and stuff from the Roman world, but he was listened to because he wasn't necessarily a Roman voice, and he was able to speak into the culture out of this different place. And so this feels like a commercial for Hope Words, but I hope you're going to be a part, and it's going to be so fun. But I look forward to these stories. Matali, you can find a movie that she has produced on Amazon called Rickshaw Girl, which is really great if you get a chance to do it. But she's written lots of children's books. She's won lots of awards. She's been nominated for the National Book Award, I believe. And we're going to talk about some of these. I brought Steeped in Stories, which is one of her books. I brought Home is in Between. I know you've got one of her books as well.
I brought Between Us and Abuela, and I also just finished reading Rickshaw Girl. I don't have it with me today. But so the one, and I haven't watched the movie yet, but I've read the story. I plan to watch the movie. But yeah, and I think it was interesting. My daughter picked this book up in particular, the Between Us and Abuela, which has to do with being on the border of the U.S. and Mexico and seeing you leaving behind the relatives that you love, but not being able to cross the border to go back to see them, but standing in that in-between zone in order to be able to communicate. And it was I think from the 3 books I've read of hers now, the one you have, Home is in Between, this one, and then the Rickshaw Girl, she just gives you like a fresh pair of eyes, a way to see the world around you and to see the people who really are living more kind of feeling their out of placeness than maybe those of the rest of us do. Even if we do, like, I understand what you meant exactly. When we moved to Oklahoma, we didn't quite really feel like Oklahomans, and they do things different there, and the culture is different. But then, like you said, we go back home and like life's gone on and we don't fit there either. So definitely feel that. But then I think it helps us to have a compassion. I think that's one of the things that I've appreciated most is she helps me have compassion in a different way through the eyes of a child.
Yes.
And so I think they're great books for our children to read, but for us to read too. And that takes me to something I want to talk briefly about is why are we encouraging adults to read kids' books? And is that a thing we should do? And I want to know what you think, because I think my gut is not to go to the children's section of the library and pick out a children's book.
Right. And I find myself like, I so loved reading children's books to my kids. It is harder for me now. Most of the children's books that I pick up now, because my kids are teenagers, so it's not something that I'm doing on a regular basis. Most of them are from friends of mine or people that I know that have written books. Like Hannah Anderson is a person, we're doing one of her books, and she just wrote this, The World God Made, and it is tremendous. It's kind of a retelling of a psalm, and just puts it into like language and the colors and the pictures, and like you said, it was like I was free to see it in a way that I hadn't seen it. C.S. Lewis, G.K. Chesterton, several people have kind of had those conversations like, why is this important? Why should you tell? And I just see that C.S. Lewis would get upset when they would even call on children's books, because he said these are for everybody, and they have truths, and they're good, and that's why you should read it, is because it's good. And I think that's what it comes down to. Like, if it's good, there's a place for it, and it's a different way. It's something different, but sometimes something different can wake us up, or kind of pull us out of.
Yes, and sometimes we read something when we're a child, and then we go back and read it. It's kind of like, I think, the way the Bible is intended to read. You read it and you learn the stories, the simple stories, maybe the Old Testament or the Gospels, but then you go back to it when you're older and you see the deeper meaning. And sometimes with children's books, certainly Narnia is like that.
Oh, yeah.
I think. And one of my this isn't one we're discussing here, but just kind of an example, one of my favorite children's books when my kids were little, but it's still one of my favorite one, is Where the Wild Things Are.
Oh, yeah.
And it's as far as I know, the author's not even a Christian, but it has such a beautiful message that I think is a biblical message. This kid just completely rebels, doesn't do what his mama wants him to do, has a bad attitude, goes to where the wild things are, and you can take that however you want it. But then when he comes back home, there's this strong sense of home, and that love is waiting on him, and forgiveness is waiting on him. And the soup is sitting there, and it's still hot, is the way that it kind of tells the ending. And I love that biblical example of homecoming, and forgiveness, and like I said, and love. But there's something that I can get from that book that I don't get from a thick 250-page book on homecoming. There just is. I think there's a beauty in children's books. And one of the jobs that I've had throughout my life is, at two different times I worked in children's ministry, and one of my favorite things whenever I was doing a training or teaching a Sunday school in my church, I kind of became known as the person who's going to bring a children's book in,
right?
And so what children's book is it going to be? And kind of, it was fun to craft stories around God, see God's word in these stories. But I definitely think that Matali's books are ones worth picking up, reading to your kids, reading yourself, and thinking about it and dialoguing, hopefully, with us.
LifeSprings Resources is committed to providing innovative learning resources for the local church. Our products reflect our commitment to the development of new and innovative ways to experience scriptural truth. Whether you're looking for material for your small group, need new curriculum for Sunday school, or you're just trying to stock up on church supplies, we've got you covered. Look for us online at lifespringsresources.com or call us at 1-800-541-1376, and our friendly customer service team will be happy to assist you. Situated in Bluefield, West Virginia, the Hopewards Writers Conference seeks to equip and encourage their patrons to tell stories of hope. This year's conference will focus on the question of living between cultures and the unique potential it holds for creativity. The conference will offer many exciting guest author speakers this year and can't wait to learn what God has been speaking into their lives. Come with us and help us tell stories of hope.
So as you can tell, not only are you and I a big fan of adult books, we like kids' books too, but I think we should go back and talk about Matali's books. So I think you have something that you wanted to read.
Yeah, we've read from the books in the episodes, and that's something that I really enjoy, and I wanted to do that with this. This book, she's telling the story of what her life is at home and how different it is, and how she feels like she has to play one part here and then play a part here. And all throughout the book, she keeps coming back. And then I go here and I have to do this way. And then I go here and I do it this way. And she's like, and so again, in between. And then I go from between here and between here and back and forth. And then she finally, she says, but after a while, she looked up at the blue sky, the breezy clouds, the birds winging by, watching over her village, watching over her town. She stretched her arms wide. She was good at making anywhere feel like home, especially here in the space between cultures. Now, home is in between. Shanti sings Didu's Bangla songs. She hums heart and soul in English. She invites Ma and Baba, Tanya and Malcolm, the whole town if they want. They remember their villages. They dance with Shanti, a Bollywood ballet, perfect for the in-between. And I love that line of Bollywood ballet because she's kind of putting the two sides of her life together, and she says it's perfect. It's me. It's like me. It's the in-between, and I'm the in-between. And then I loved what Matali says in the author's note. She says, my parents were from the villages of Bengal. They brought me to the United States when I was 7, raised me in a town where we were one of a few families from other countries. I worked hard to understand American manners, slang, trends, rituals, the code at school. At the same time, I was trying to stay fluent in my traditional language and the code of home. Going back and forth was tiring, and I often felt as if I didn't belong in either world. But once I grew up, I realized that switching between two codes as a child had been a gift. It's like learning a new language. Kids are faster and better at it than grown-ups are. And if we work at it as kids, we keep some ability to crack cultural codes for the rest of our lives. It's like a superpower, I tell young immigrants. The space between cultures doesn't have to be a barrier for children who grow up there. It can become a threshold of gratitude to celebrate the best of many worlds. Please make yourself at home in Shanti's story. Her name is Bangla, which means peace.
Yeah, that makes me think of, we've loosely talked about how these books might fit into the Hopewards theme for this year. And I'm not even like officially a part of Hopewards. I just love it, and I'm excited that we can partner. But as we look at all of the books, all 5 of them, there is this place where do we find ourselves at home in the in-between?
Yeah.
And so I think that would be a great thing for even us to interact with our listeners and with our co-readers is, where's your in-between right now? Because we're all living in the in-between in some way, and it might be grief like we've talked about in a different book, or it might be, you might physically be feeling like you're in between because of where you live physically.
Or as Christians, all of us live in that in-between. Yeah. We live in the in-between of we're in the world, but we're not of it.
Yeah. Or the kingdom has come, it's already, but it's not yet.
Yeah.
You know, all of those things.
All the promises that we have that we're in tension with, we're trying to pull them into the present, but we realize that the fullness is in the future, and we're living as ambassadors of a kingdom that's going to eventually, well, it's come, but it's still coming.
Right.
And we all live in that, and that you've used the word in several of our episodes, that tension.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think of that as the in-betweenness, that tension between the two sides. But I don't know about you, that tension, that place of being stretched in both directions is the place where I found God the most, I think.
Yeah. I think so too. For sure.
Yeah.
In that in-between space.
I appreciate Mitali. All of her books talk about kind of this crossing boundaries, crossing borders. And so all of them deal with that tension of being pulled in different directions. So I've really appreciated her work. I've not got to know her yet. I can't wait to meet her at Hope Words and spend some time with her. But I loved what she said, like this type of life that she lived. It doesn't have to be a hindrance. It can be a superpower.
Yeah.
And we were talking about that kids' books give us a different way of seeing the world. And I think that's what she's doing. She's saying, I know this is hard.
Yeah.
But you know what? It can be good too.
That's right. Right. It can make you will get those scars from being there in the middle.
Right.
But in the end, you'll be stronger because of it. Yeah, it's good.
I think of Hole in the World. She said, when I realized that God was fierce.
Yeah.
And she said, until then, I didn't know that something could be fierce and good.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes me think of how speaking of children's books, how they talk about Aslan, who is the God character. It's very similar. Well.
Yeah. What does he say? I never said he was safe.
Yes.
I said he was good.
That's right. He's good, not safe. Well, I think this has been fun. Fun to kind of sneak some kids' books in here, especially from an author like Mitali Perkins. I'm with you. I can't wait to see her at Hope Words. And if any of the books that we read and the books that we highlight on Bring Me My Books, those are on the Life Springs resources page. We encourage you to go there and look for them there and support both Hope Words and Life Springs. And that's one way that you can support us just by getting the books there and then attending the conference.
Absolutely.
So we hope that you'll do that. If you come to Hope Words, Travis will be hard to miss, but I'll be there too. And we'd love to speak with you about what you're reading if you're going through these books. But in the meantime, we look forward to the next book we'll be reading. We hope you're continuing to read along with us and participating in conversations on social media. But this is it for this bonus episode of Bring Me My Books. Thanks so much for joining us.